I stood in the middle of the bright, gleaming store, breathing in the faint scent of polished leather and fresh paint. My reflection stared back at me from the spotless glass counter, hair sleek, makeup flawless, silk blouse perfectly pressed. To anyone walking in, I looked like just another well-dressed woman admiring the display. But the heavy set of keys in my purse told a different story. My phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't have to look to know who it was. The same cousin who used to laugh every time I posted about my little shop on Facebook. Her message popped up anyway. "So, still running that dusty shop of yours?" I smiled just a little. If only she knew. I turned toward the large front window, watching customers stroll in and out of other stores in the mall. This place used to intimidate me, back when I couldn't even afford a latte from the cafe across the hall. Now I own the entire chain. I wrapped my fingers around the keys in my purse, feeling their cool weight, and let the memory of those early days rise up in my chest. The laughter, the whispers, the sting of being dismissed. And just like that, I was back there standing in my first shop, holding my breath and pretending their words didn't hurt. I can still picture that little shop, chipped blue paint on the door, a crooked, open sign that never hung straight no matter how many times I fixed it. It smelled faintly of cardboard and cinnamon from the candles I kept burning to make it feel warm. I loved that shop. It was mine. But not everyone saw it that way. "Savannah, this isn't a business, it's a hobby," my aunt had said that afternoon, her voice carrying over the rows of handmade journals I'd carefully lined up. She was standing there with her daughter, Madison, who rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. "Who even buys this stuff?" Madison laughed. "You should just get a real job. Starbucks is hiring." I forced a smile, gripping the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles ached. My heart was pounding so loud I barely heard myself say, "Thanks for stopping by." They left without buying a thing. When the bell over the door stopped ringing, I sank onto the little stool behind the register and stared at the empty floor. My throat burned. My hands were shaking. Their voices echoed in my head like they had been waiting all day just to remind me how foolish I was. I reached for the small bracelet my grandmother had given me before she passed, silver with a tiny charm that read, "Keep going." She used to tell me, "Savvy, you come from women who survived worse than this. Don't let anyone tell you what you can't do." That night, I made my choice. I stayed late, counting every dollar I had left in the cash box. It wasn't much, but it was enough to place one more order. Better quality stock, riskier suppliers. If I failed, I'd lose everything. But if I succeeded, I locked up the shop, turned the key, and whispered into the night, "I'll prove them wrong." The next few months were brutal. I worked from sunrise to midnight, unpacking shipments, redesigning displays, posting every item online by hand. Some days I barely ate, just coffee in the morning, a granola bar if I remembered, and whatever leftovers I grabbed on the way home. My hands were always sore, my nails chipped, my back aching from lifting boxes, but slowly, something started to change. One Saturday morning, I sold out of my new journals before noon. A woman from across town had driven in just because she'd seen my post on Instagram. She hugged me before leaving, telling me, "Don't close this place. We need shops like yours." It was the first time I believed I might actually make it. But belief didn't pay the bills. I started reaching out to other small business owners online, asking questions, learning about bulk orders, shipping hacks, and supplier negotiations. That's when I met Karen, a seasoned business coach who had built and sold 3 boutiques of her own. She didn't sugarcoat anything. "If you're serious about scaling this," she told me over Zoom, "you need to stop thinking like a shopkeeper and start thinking like a CEO." Her words hit me like a challenge. With Karen's help, I streamlined inventory, created a website that actually worked, and started offering subscription boxes. I stayed up late watching YouTube videos about marketing funnels, taking notes until my eyes blurred. Every mistake cost money I couldn't spare, but every small win made me hungrier. My first profitable quarter felt like a miracle. I cried in the back room, clutching the bracelet my grandmother had given me, whispering, "We did it." I didn't post about it, though. I kept my updates small, a new shipment here, a thank you post there. I didn't want my family to know how well things were going. Their voices still lived in my head, ready to laugh at the first sign of weakness. Then came the day a local investor stopped by my shop. He'd been watching my progress quietly and offered me funding to open a second location. I almost said no. The fear of failing twice as big was paralyzing, but Karen's voice was in my ear. Think like a CEO. Within 2 years, I had 5 stores. By the 3rd year, I bought out a competitor. By the 5th, I had the chance to do something I never imagined. Purchase the entire chain of stores I used to walk past in the mall, the same ones that once made me feel small and invisible. I signed the contract with shaking hands, tears blurring my vision. No one knew. Not yet. The day they came, I was in the flagship store, reviewing the new window display. It was quiet except for the hum of soft music and the click of my heels on the polished floor. I was wearing my favorite cream blazer, the one that made me feel like I could walk into any boardroom and own it literally. The bell over the door chimed, and I turned to see them. My aunt, my cousin Madison, and a couple of other family members trailing behind. They looked exactly the same, except for the confusion on their faces. "Savannah," my aunt said, as if she'd spotted a ghost. "Hi," I said, keeping my voice even. "Welcome to my store." Their eyes darted around, taking in the sleek shelves, the custom lighting, the rows of designer products perfectly lined up. Madison whispered something under her breath and actually took a step back. "You work here?" my aunt asked almost hopefully. "No," I said, and pulled the keys from my purse, letting them dangle in the air for a moment before I slid them back inside. "I own it." Silence. I walked them through the store slowly, letting them take in every detail. The framed newspaper article on the wall with my picture on it. The employee schedule pinned to the backroom door with my signature at the bottom. The polished nameplate on the office door that read Savannah Cole, CEO. "This used to be that chain you loved so much," I said, watching their faces. "You remember? The one you said I'd never be able to afford shopping in." Madison's mouth dropped open. "I bought it last year." I smiled. Not cruelly, just enough to let them feel the weight of it. Every single location, including this one. My aunt's cheeks flushed. She looked like she wanted to speak, but couldn't find the words. I walked to the center of the store and turned to face them fully. "I used to replay that day in my head," I said, my voice steady now. "You standing in my little shop, telling me I was wasting my time. I believed you for about 5 minutes. Then I decided you were wrong." No one moved. No one spoke. I led them to my office and gestured for them to sit. The leather chairs made a soft sound as they sank into them. I stood, leaning lightly against my desk. "This wasn't luck," I said. "This was years of 16-hour days, missed holidays, tears in the stockroom. And now," I spread my hands, taking in the view from my glass office, the entire store visible like a stage I owned. "Now I run the whole show." Madison glanced at the bracelet on my wrist, the one with a tiny charm, and said quietly, "We didn't know you'd come this far." "That's because I stopped telling you," I said gently. It was easier to build in silence. The room stayed quiet, thick with realization, until my aunt finally said, "Savannah, we were wrong." I nodded, letting the words settle between us like an overdue payment finally made. I stayed quiet for a long moment, letting their apology hang in the air. "You were wrong," I said finally, "but here's the thing. I'm not here to make you feel bad. I'm here because I need you to understand something." My aunt's hands fidgeted in her lap. Madison stared at the floor. "When you mocked me," I continued, "you weren't just teasing. You made me doubt myself. You almost made me quit. And I don't want you to do that to anyone else. Not to me, not to Madison's little sister, not to some kid in this family who dares to dream bigger than you think they should." I sat across from them, resting my elbows on my desk. "So, here are my terms." They looked up, startled, as though this was some kind of negotiation. "First," I said, holding up a finger, "respect is non-negotiable. For me, for my business, for my employees. No more jokes about Savannah's little shop. It's a company now." Say it with respect. Second, I went on, I want you to support each other. Madison, you told me to work at Starbucks, fine. But if your sister ever says she wants to start a bakery or a YouTube channel, you don't laugh. You ask how you can help. Madison's eyes softened. And third, I said, leaning back, if you want me in your lives, and I do want that, believe it or not, it has to be on honest terms. No gossip. No dismissing my work behind my back. I've built my peace, and I'm not letting anyone take it away. For a moment, no one said anything. Then my aunt nodded slowly. You're right, she said. We've been small-minded. We can do better. I believed her. And I added, softening my tone, I'm willing to help you too if you're serious. Madison, if you've got a dream of your own, I'll invest. But not if you're going to roll your eyes at me while I write the check. Madison let out a shaky laugh, wiping at her eyes. I actually have been thinking about going back to school, she said. Then do it, I said. And when it gets hard, remember me, standing in my shop, wondering if I was wasting my life. Keep going anyway. Something shifted in the room then. The tension eased. It wasn't revenge. It was something better. The store was quiet after they left. I walked slowly through the aisles, running my hand along the polished shelves. Every item here had a story, a risk I'd taken, a night I'd cried, a morning I'd refused to give up. I stopped by the front window, watching shoppers pass by, their reflections overlapping mine in the glass. For years, I had stood on the other side of windows like this, wondering if I'd ever belong in places like these. Now I was the one who decided what stayed, what sold, what thrived. Later that night, I locked up the store myself. Most CEOs would have let the staff handle it, but there was something about the weight of the key in my hand that I didn't want to give away. I touched the bracelet on my wrist, the one with the tiny charm that read, "Keep going." My grandmother's words echoed in my mind like they always did. Don't let anyone tell you what you can't do. For the first time in years, I felt completely at peace. The anger, the hurt, even the need to prove them wrong. All of it had melted into something softer. I wasn't just the girl who survived their doubt anymore. I was the woman who turned it into fuel and built an empire. I stood there a moment longer, taking it all in. The gleam of the display lights, the faint smell of leather and wood polish, the quiet hum of a space that was fully, completely mine. I smiled, slipped the keys into my purse, and whispered to myself, they mock my shop. Now I own the whole chain.